welcome to my channel. Today, we'll be taking a look at a game from the 2024 The Champions Chess Tour Julius Baer Generation Cup. Now, this tournament actually has already ended, and the result is that Magnus is again in first place, and Firouzja is in second place. So actually, this tournament was I'm just going to quickly introduce it. So the Julius Baer Generation Cup is the fourth and last tournament before the 2024 Champions Chess Tour final. So just by listening to the name, you can figure out that this is actually a really important and high level tournament, and it is played online. So it's online rapid chess, 10 minutes. And you can see that the prize fund in total is $300,000. So that is actually a lot. And there are 3 divisions in total, 56 players in all. Now, Division 1, the top division, includes players like Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, Alireza Firouzja, Magnus Carlsen, Alexander Grischuk, Lan Nepomucci, and many more. So there are actually about if I'm not mistaken, about 16 players in total, in the Division 1. But yeah, only a few players who have qualified into the Division 1 can play in it. But anyways, let's take a look at the results. So we can see that the grand final, it is Magnus against Alireza. So actually, these 2 players, they have been facing against each other in a lot of tournaments. For example, in the 2024 Speed Chess Championship, these 2 players have been facing against each other in the finals as well. And in that tournament, it ended in Magnus winning. But I mean, this doesn't mean that Firouzja is a bad player. Maybe because it's just Magnus is just too strong, but Firouzja at such a young age, I believe he is only 20 years old, about 20. He is playing so many games against so many top grandmasters, and he has a great chess technique, and he faces Magnus in a lot of times. So actually, we can see that this is the grand finals. It was it's Alireza Firouzja against Magnus Carlsen, and actually in the first few games, it ended in draws, 3 draws. But in this game, this was the game which decided who is the winner. So in this game, and actually this is the game that we'll be taking a look today. So in this game, Magnus is white. He is playing against Firouzja as black. So Firouzja is black. And let's just see how it started. Alright, so this game, Magnus started with knight f3, the red T opening. And after knight f6, g3, g6, b3. So actually Magnus here is playing he is playing a bit solid, you can say it that way, because he is going to fianchetto both of his bishops on his bishops this way. And you can see that after bishop b2, d6, bishop g2, and then e5. So you can see that actually Firouzja is just playing the King's Indian. So I mean, this is how you should just play in the King's Indian defense. You should just place your bishop on g7 and then go d6, e5 to develop. And on white side, Magnus is you can see that he is fianchettoing his both of his bishops onto onto the big diagonals. So this is actually a very interesting play of Magnus. So let's see how Alireza reacted. He played e5. And Magnus played d3. So actually Magnus is playing really solid. Not passive, but he is not doing he is not getting a lot of action actually. He is just playing normal chess. He is not doing anything aggressive in the center. He is just he is just developing. He doesn't want any counterplay yet. So first of all, Magnus is trying to develop, and then probably after developing all of his pieces, getting his king to safety, then he will probably start some attacks. So, and also Alireza is doing the same thing as well, developing. So he went short castle, and here Magnus played c4. Alireza played a5, launching an attack on the queen side. And here Magnus played knight c3, just developing. Here Alireza played h6, short castle, c6, e4, and rook e8. rook e1, knight a6. So actually all of these moves are pretty normal. Both sides are just developing, and white's main idea to develop here is actually to go d4. So this is white's main idea, to open up in the center, because once you go d4, the d file will get open, and you can see that this pawn on d6 will be an immediate weakness. And black's idea is actually to go on the queen side, to go a4, and also even having some king side attacking ideas, like for example knight d7 and then f5. So actually there are many plans for both sides. Here, first of all, Magnus played h3, which is actually a very necessary move here and useful move. It first of all opens up a square for the king, so in the future if white has any back rank problems, the king can go to this h2 square to keep safe. And also white is gaining control of this g4 square, preventing black from going bishop g4 or knight g4. So it's a very useful move, useful quiet move. In the game, bishop d7 was played, and here Magnus played d4. Actually, I think bishop d7 is an inaccurate move. What he should have played instead is to go knight c5. Knight c5, developing your knight, putting the knight onto a better spot, putting pressure on the d3 pawn, and also supporting a4 ideas. Probably here white can still go d4, but now after you take, you can see that the big difference is that the knight now on c5 is immediately attacking this e4 pawn. So this e4 pawn is actually facing a lot of pressure, even though right now it is being well defended. But first of all, you can see that there's no clear way to get rid of this knight on c5, which is very annoying for white. And second of all, in the future, for example, like queen e7 ideas, or black can try anything to attack this e4 pawn, and even in the future having some d5 ideas. So but in the game, instead of going knight c5, Alireza here played bishop d7, and then d4 was played. Here he took on d4. If actually a better option here would be just to leave the pawns here and then go b5. So black just needs to ignore all of this action in the center and just start his attack on the queen side, because now if white were to take on e5, then after d takes c5, black no longer has this weakness on d6, and now it is white who is facing some queenside problems. So that is a better option for black, but instead in the game, Alireza took on d4 immediately, which is also okay. And after knight takes d4, then knight c5, queen c2, queen c8, attacking the h3 pawn. Of course, Magnus saw that and played king h2. And in the game here, Alireza actually played a very interesting move. Actually, not interesting, but a very tricky move, which is knight g4. Now, at first sight, it might be like, why is black giving up a knight? But then if you just calculate for a few moves, you just need to look more closely at the position, and you can see that the main point here is that there's h6 g4 and bishop takes d4, and this is what happened in the game. So sometimes you have to be really careful, or you have to look for diagonals, both on your side and on your opponent's side as well, because sometimes if you miss diagonals, especially for the bishops and the queens, then it might you might be losing some opportunities, or you might be blundering for your opponent's ideas. So in the game, knight g4, h takes g4, bishop takes d4, and rook a d1. So here you can see that actually in this position, the reason that white is slightly better is because of this d6 pawn. If here black didn't take on d4 immediately and just waited for white to take on e5, then black wouldn't be having this d6 weakness. But in the game, after rook a d1, you can see that now this d6 pawn is a major weakness, and it is actually annoying black a lot. In the game, bishop g7 was played. Now here, you have to note that if you take on d6 immediately, this is okay, but here there's just bishop takes g4, and I'm not sure if white really wants to make this kind of exchange, because exchanging this, taking this d6 pawn for this g4 pawn, I'm not sure if that is that is good for white, because this d6 pawn is just a forever weakness if white just leaves it there. And I think all white needs to do is just to go f3 to defend all of his pawns, and then go attack this pawn. And if this situation happens, then I think white will just be probably up a full pawn. But in the game, however, actually f3 was played in the game, and queen c7, queen d2, so Magnus is putting all the pressure on the d6 pawn. Here, bishop e6 was played. And now, if you go, for example, like 92, not 92, sorry, but in the game 92 was played, but here, if you go, for example, something like queen takes d6, this is actually not good for, white, because there's now queen takes d6, and after rook takes d6, here actually the queens first of all are being traded off, so they're off the board. And even though you might say that white's rook looks pretty active on d6, but actually it doesn't really do anything, because this whole d file, like especially the important d7 square, is being controlled by black's pieces. And here black can go a4 to gain counterplay on the queen side. And if you go, for example, you don't want to take, of course. And if you go, for example, like b4 to attack the knight, then unfortunately here there's a3 attacking the bishop. And let's say if the bishop goes to a1, for example, then after bishop knight a4, actually in this position, black is already having a great advantage here, because the b4 and the c4 pawn are huge weaknesses, and also this bishop is really passive on a1. So that is what might happen if queen d6 take was played, and that's why Magnus didn't go for it, but instead went 92, which is the best option. And in the game, rook d8 was played. So Alireza finally is able to protect this pawn. But actually, a better option here would be to first of all take to trade the bishops off, and then go a4 immediately. And now, actually, in this situation, if white were to go b4 again, there's a3 still. And again, this is better for black. So in the game, rook d8 was played first, and after bishop g7, king takes g7, queen d3 check, f6, and rook d2. So here Magnus's idea is to double the rooks on the d file and put as many pressure on the d6 pawn as possible, because actually in this position, the d6 pawn is the major weakness in black's territory. Actually, if you're trying to attack other places in black's territory, it's not that easy to get into the position. So here, attacking the d6 pawn is the best and easiest idea to do. So queen e7 was played in the game, and after rook ed1, bishop f7, knight d4, rook d7. So black is also going to double his rooks on the d file. f4, king g8. So king g8 is, I think, is trying to get away from this diagonal, because white is threatening to go g5 on the next move, so it's best for black to get the king away from this diagonal. In the game, king g8 was played, and now rook e2. So sometimes when you are putting all of your pieces, when you're trying to attack a weakness with all of your pieces, but it doesn't really do anything, it's best for you to change your plan or go for another way to get into your opponent's position. And here, that's what Magnus is doing. He is trying to now, because you can see that attacking the d6 pawn is not that useful anymore, because black is able to defend it well, and it's not that easy for white to fully attack it. So now we can see that attacking d6 is not a great idea anymore. Then we should change our plans. And here, in this case, the new plan is for white to go e5. And this is what Magnus is wanting to do. So in the game, a4 was played, and now after b4, knight a6. Well, this is actually a mistake, because again, he should have gone for, and actually this is a move which needs some sort of calculation, but he should have gone for a3 immediately. And now it might seem that black is giving up a knight, but actually he is not, because after d takes c5, your knight cannot really go anywhere, because there's rook takes d1 of this pin. Maybe you can go knight f5, but after g takes f5, rook takes, queen takes, in this position, I think the position is just sort of equalized. If you take on f6, then unfortunately there's bishop takes c4, and if you take on f5, let's say if you take with the e pawn, for example, there is now queen d4, and if you take with the g pawn, there is actually still queen d4. And if you trade the queens off, then black will have a very strong d4 passed pawn. And if you go e5 trying to create a passed pawn of your own, unfortunately you'll lose the c4 pawn. And if, let's say, white goes rook d2, you can now go c5. Even though white also has a passed pawn, but it's just only one. And if white goes e6, for example, it cannot be pushed further anymore, and black will just probably go king f8, king e7 to blockade, and then just develop this rook this way, and it will be completely winning for black. So in the game, although black didn't play a3 and instead played knight a6, which is a mistake, but here, actually, Magnus didn't find the best reaction. What he should have played is actually to go knight c2 here. And knight c2's main idea is to first of all open up this d file, and then opening up this diagonal as well for the queen, threatening to go e5 on the next move. But I guess knight c2 is not an easy move to see, and b5 is a move which is pretty much human-like, and it's played by Magnus, so it is not like a huge mistake or anything, but it just misses the best opportunity here. In the game, c takes b5 was played after knight takes b5, rook c8, rook d2, attacking the d6 pawn, rook takes c4, queen e3. Now, actually, queen f3 would have been a better option, but it's just some difference in detail, so I mean, queen e3 is also okay, obviously. But now it just runs into d5. So actually, the reason that queen f3 is better because it attacks, not attacks, but it defends this d5 square. Like, it gains more control of the d5 square, prevents black from going d5. So that's the main difference. But now if you go queen e3 as played in the game, then you run into this pin, and that's what probably Magnus have missed in the game. d5 was played, e5, and knight c7. So Alireza found all the best moves here, and after knight takes c7, rook c7, bishop takes d5, bishop takes, rook takes, rook takes, rook takes, and now queen e6, queen e3. Now, actually, in this position, this is just a very much equalized position. If black just goes, for example, like f takes e5, and then probably after rook takes c5 or anything, this is just pretty much equalized position. You can just take on a2 with check, and this position is probably black will be like trying to win this game because black is up a pawn. So, but anyways, in the game, queen takes g4 was played, and it is now giving white some chances. But of course, you can now take a look at both sides time usage, and you can see that Alireza only has about 14 seconds left on this clock, while Magnus still has 1 minute left. So this means that Alireza is already under time trouble, and anything can happen in this situation. e6 was played, and after rook g7, because you can't really take on e6 because there's now queen g6. And so that's why in the game rook g7 was played, but now there's f5. G takes f5, rook d8 check, king h7, rook d7, queen h5, king g2, queen g6. Now this is actually losing immediately on the spot because after rook g7, queen g7, queen d7, f4, g4. Now this is actually a blunder because you can just even take a look at the eval bar. After this g4 move, the eval bar just went straight down. Even though it's probably still winning for white, but here the best reaction is just to ignore it and go to either king f1 or king h1 to just run away, because now after king h1, let's say you really have to, you need to take on d7, or if you take on g3, now unfortunately there's just e7, and white will be promoting on the next move. But in the game, Magnus didn't see that and instead played g4. And now he missed this f5 idea, e7. But although this is still winning for white, but still it might be a little bit tricky. Queen takes g4, king f2, queen g3, king e2, f3, king e3. Now this is a blunder or a miss. Actually, in this position, Magnus is already getting himself into some trouble. He is still winning, but it's an only move. All of the other options are draws. So here he can only go to d3, and it needs a lot of calculation because you have to calculate what happens after f2, for example. Now you go king e2, and you have to calculate what happens after like f1 equals queen, because after king f1, black will just keep checking you. So you have to calculate if this is still a draw or if it's still winning for white. And actually, in that situation, if you go king d3, it is still winning for white. But unfortunately, in the game with like both sides under time trouble, it is not that easy to see. But after king e3 here, Alireza, he blundered, like he missed the opportunity to draw. Actually, all he has to do here is just go either queen e1 or queen g1 to check Magnus, like to always check the king, and that'll be a very easy draw. But unfortunately, in the game, he played f2 and immediately ran out of checks. Well, not ran out of checks, but in the end, he will run out of checks because the king will be able to get to the queens, like to go out the board. But let's see what happened. Queen e5. So first of all, he had to give up the f2 pawn, and after a few checks, the king started to go up on the board, and the position is looking like stranger and stranger because you can see that the king is now immediately going to this side, going to b6 and then going to c7 and immediately running behind the pawns. And after queen to e5 and after queen to c7, here Alireza resigned because first of all, he lost on time, but on the other hand, this is just a losing position for him. I mean, after queen c7, no checks at all. If you go queen h8 check, there's just e8 equals queen with check, and this is just winning. So, actually, before here in this place, it will be a very easy draw if Alireza just played like queen e1 or queen g1, just keep checking white's king, and it should be a very easy draw because the king will always get like, so all black needs to do is just to lock this king aside this box, not allow white's king to go to the e file to go up the board, and it should be a very easy draw because black will just keep checking and checking and checking. But unfortunately, under time trouble, in the end, Alireza lost this game because he missed the opportunity to draw and played f2. But anyways, this game was actually Magnus actually won this game in some luck because it should have been a draw. But sometimes luck is part of your winning, like part of the win. So yeah. So after this very important game, Magnus, in the overall points, he won this tournament as well. So congratulations to Magnus. And hope you guys enjoyed this game as well. Hope you guys like this video, and if you like it, you can leave comments down below to tell me. And please subscribe. See you in the next video. Bye!